So, where do I start with this video? I'm recording this just after Parramatta had 42 points put on them against a South Sydney team, and I said during the week that if we didn't win this game that we are officially a club in crisis, and that's what we are now. Now I want to point out first and foremost that across the entire scope of the club, we're not a club in crisis in every department. Off the field, the club is kicking a lot of goals, as they say these days. Membership numbers are fantastic, crowd figures are okay. The new Centre of Excellence is being built at Kellyville, which should be ready, I think, maybe next year or the year after that. And the club recently announced a multi-million pound or dollar sponsorship deal with James Harley starting in 2025. So off the field, in some regards, the club is not a basket case, but certainly when it comes to player retention, recruitment, the current player and roster, the coaching options, and a few other things like that, including the board and the recruitment staff, that's where the club is in crisis. At the recording of this video, the club's in 14th place on the table, only 3 wins for the entire year. I believe that they're now on a 5-game losing streak, and as I just mentioned, South Sydney put 42 points on them. This is a South Sydney team that's only won 1 match for the entire year. Some people said that they were lucky to win that. They've got 7 or 8 players out. For this game, they had Cody Walker ruled out just before kick-off. Jack Whiting didn't play in the second half. You had Damien Cook playing centre, winger, 5'8". You had Latrell Mitchell in the sin bin, and they still put 42 points on the club. And now with the sacking of Brad Arthur, you can't blame Brad Arthur for this loss, because this is clearly a playing group issue, the players, the roster, and a recruitment issue. It's not a coaching issue. I've spoken a bit about the Brad Arthur sacking, and what do I think about it personally, if you don't already know already. I'm surprised that the club sacked Brad Arthur, because the board's been so conservative over the last couple of years with pretty much everything, and they haven't been very proactive. I thought that they would keep Brad Arthur in charge until the end of 2025. But after the loss against Melbourne, they made the hasty decision to terminate him after being there for almost 11 years, and they put Trent Barrett in as interim head coach for the rest of the year. And Trent Barrett, in my personal opinion, is one of the worst coaches in the modern era. He nearly got Manly their first ever wooden spoon, and statistically he's Canterbury's worst ever head coach in their history, and he got them a wooden spoon as well. But this loss today, it's not Trent Barrett's fault. He's been shot in the deep end. I bet you when he signed on to be the assistant coach, he probably never thought, I'm going to be the head coach of this club one day. So with this club at the moment, what we're seeing today, it's down to poor recruitment, retention, and poor squad management. If you watch my video that I did for the season preview, I mentioned a few key issues that I found. And one of them was just the lack of player depth across the board, and especially with the backs. And I was running through my head all the hypotheticals. What happens if this player goes down? What happens if this happens? What happens if things go this way? Well, all my worst fears have come to life, because pretty much everything I thought might happen has happened. Moses went down, Gutherson went down. There's been problems with the players in the New South Wales Cup going down, because even how things stand at the moment, even though Sivo's being picked, the coaching staff don't really have much of an option, because the players that could have replaced Sivo, the likes of Hayes, Dunster, Arthur Miller-Stephen and all that, they're out injured for the rest of the year. So looking at the start of the season, I went, if we have any injuries with the backs, we're in major trouble, because we're very light. And that comes down to the player recruitment and retention. If you look at good clubs, they're always proactive. They're always looking at the what ifs. They've always got people ready to step up to take someone's place in first grade. At Parramatta, the club's got plenty of forwards. If there was an injury crisis with the forwards, say Paolo went down, Campbell Gillard went down, the club can replace them. There's tons of forwards out there that can't make the team, that are in the New South Wales Cup, that could come up to the NRL. But with the backs and with the key positions like your Clint Gutherson, your Mitchell Moses, Dylan Brown, players like that, if one of them goes down, the club's fucked pretty much, because it's the way that the roster's been handled over the last couple of years, and that comes down to Mark O'Neill and some of the recruitment team. I don't know if it's a salary cap scandal of 2016 and that the club's been scared to splash the cash ever since, or maybe it's an issue of attracting players to the club. But on top of that, I've noticed over the last couple of years, the club's been lowballing a lot of players. They lowballed Reid Marnie. Reid Marnie only wanted 200, 300 grand extra a year. The club said, no, we can't have that. He ended up going to Canterbury. Then we lowballed Isaiah Papali'i. He ended up going to the West Tigers. We released a couple of players that made that 2022 grand final side, and we haven't replaced them with an adequate replacement. Also, I've said on a lot of forums at the club, it looks like they're trying to bargain buy a team. So instead of going to the market and trying to find adequate first graders or an adequate replacement, they're going for the cheapest option. Case in point, when Marnie left the club just decided to sign Josh Hodgson, a 35-year-old hooker who had 3 bad knees, and I went, if he lasts even a couple of games, I'd be surprised. And anyways, he ends up going down injured. And then you look at the recruitment for the off-season for this year, they only signed Morgan Harper and Kelma Tuologi, and that's it. That's the only recruitment that the club made. I think maybe the club were hoping, let's just hope that throughout this entire year nobody gets injured, because it just seems with this club at the moment that in the past under Brad Arthur, they have signed some players on the cheap that have worked. Bryce Cartwright, Nathan Brown, there's a couple of other examples, but that type of stuff doesn't work every time. Occasionally you have to spend money to make money, you have to splash the cash. And outside probably this recent signing of Zach Lomax, over the last couple of years, the club's been guilty of trying to lowball players, bargain buy their way to a team, and in the end it's resulted in the club looking pretty weak across the board, especially if injuries are to occur. Just going back to the Brad Arthur thing again, one thing that I forgot to mention is the debacle that was the Wayne Bennett scenario. Now this is another example of, look, the difference between how a good club's run and how a bad club's run, because a good club would be proactive, they'd be thinking about the what ifs. Now if this Parramatta board at the start of the year had any sort of doubt in their mind for the year, going, what happens if we miss the finals again? What happens if we have another bad year? Really, at the start of the year, it was the worst kept secret that Wayne Bennett, this was going to be his last year at Redcliffe. Now if I were in charge of the club or had any say, I'd be on the phone. If I had any doubt that Brad Arthur or Parramatta could not make the finals this year, it's going to be another bad year, I'd be on the phone to Wayne Bennett at the start of the year and just putting the feelers out there. I wouldn't offer him a deal, but I'd say, look, this is rugby league history from Parramatta. Wayne, we understand that you're coming off contract at the end of the year with Redcliffe. If things don't really turn out good at Parramatta, would you maybe be interested in coaching us next year? Just put the feelers out, just like that. But I think the club, on this occasion with Wayne Bennett, they were too late. The season was starting to slip away, and at the same time South were having a bad year, and the club did nothing about it until after South Sydney had already approached Wayne Bennett. And I just think that was the wrong way to go. But in terms of the timing of this sacking, it's not good for the club, I think, to do it. I think Brad Arthur should have at least been kept on to the end of the year, and then the club could have moved forward from that. And I think also from a board point of view, the last couple of years, things haven't been going well with the board. I've listened to interviews with some of the people that are up the top, like Sarantinos, and I think it's McKelduff. And in interviews, they've just been going, especially when they've been asked the questions about how Parramatta's been going this year and last year, they've been going, oh, but injuries and Dylan Brown and Mitchell Moses isn't there currently, and things will just sort themselves out. And then they try to turn the conversation to, oh, did you know that we've got the most members out of all the Sydney clubs, and did you know that our crowd figures are good and the Leeds club made another profit that year? Okay, that stuff is good, but you're going away from the actual problems here. And at the moment, there just seems to be a vibe at the club like, oh, when Mitchell Moses comes back, everything's going to be sound as a pound. Well, it's kind of pathetic that this year there's been other clubs out there, Eastern Suburbs, Newcastle, South Sydney, and today, as we saw, we've seen New Zealand. Some clubs, they've been missing key players for a couple of weeks, but yet they still put in the performances. It seems like with Parramatta at the moment that, okay, Mitchell Moses is out, only one key player, and the club just falls just like that. Are you telling me Mitchell Moses has an effect on Parramatta like Diego Maradona had with Argentina? No Maradona, no World Cup for Argentina. Is that how it is? Because it's really scary that, just say hypothetically, if we do pick up wins and Moses comes back, that if he's not there, the club just folds like a deck of cards. I mean, the players in this circumstance, because okay, yes, the coaching staff and all that, they're part of the blame, but the players, I should say, they're also part of the blame for this as well, because some of them, especially the likes of Joey Lussick, Sean Lane, Micah Sivo, Ryan Mattison, players like that, they have to have a good look in the mirror. They have to have a look at their own performances. They all have to do a lot of soul searching, I'm telling you, because other clubs out there are putting in the performances without their players, and with those, it seems one or two players out fold like a deck of cards. Now, I've heard a lot of opinions on where the club's gone wrong, but one of the best ones is, I listened to a guy called League Freak, part of the Fergo and Freak podcast, and he talks about the fact that Parramatta, one of their main problems is that they invested a lot of their cap in the players that haven't got the job done in the past, and he was talking about Gutherson, Brown and Moses. Now, he's partly correct for that, because yes, Gutherson, Moses, Brown, players like that, they haven't done anything in their careers. Like, okay, they might have played State of Origin, but he's talking about winning premierships, winning the big finals games. They haven't really achieved that, and he's partly correct, but it's a double-edged sword, because with how the club is and the fact that they're so conservative, they don't want to splash the cash on different players, and the fact that I think in some ways it's hard to attract talent to Parramatta. I mean, it is, because obviously there's a lot of issues behind the scenes, and the fact that the club has a premiership drought which stretches 38 years, that's not appealing to a lot of the star players out there. So in some regards, we had to splash the cash on these players because we didn't really have any sort of other options. But in turn, it's up to the club and the players to own up to the mistakes, to look themselves in the mirror and to be better. As far as I'm concerned, the season for Parramatta is done. The main goal for me, if I were in charge of Parramatta in any kind of capacity, would be do not come last. Do not come last. With this club this year, there's still a few games to go. The finals are out of the question, I believe. The clubs and the squad's not good enough to make the finals. But with this period coming up, with the Origin period, it could be, in some ways, a blessing in disguise for the team, because outside of Hopgood, he might get picked for Queensland, but outside of that, the squad, there's not going to be anyone else that's selected for State of Origin this year, and there's going to be a lot of other teams that are going to have players out for Origin who might get injuries during Origin. But for us, especially with Moses and Gutherson coming back in the next 1 or 2 weeks, it's a chance to pick up points against some weakened teams. Now, I know that we just lost against a weakened team, but you get me points. And I think the concerning thing at the moment is, with the buys coming up, I know West Tigers, South and Gold Coast having a buy, that I think potentially after the Cronulla game, if we do not win that game, we'll be bottom of the table. Bottom of the table. Now, there's some tough games coming up in amongst the Origin period. We've got to play against Eastern Suburbs, Cronulla and all that caber, but they'll have players out for Origin, so that's the only sort of positive that I can take out of this period of the year, is that we've got Moses and Gutherson coming back. We'll see if the performances change under them. If they don't, the club's in massive trouble. As I said, crisis at the moment. But this period coming up, the Origin period, it's crucial. But as I said, that has to be the main goal for the end of the rest of this year, is just not to come last. But in the meantime, the club has to be looking towards 2025 and 2026. I think there's going to have to be some tough discussions made with certain players, because there's a lot of players coming off contract at the end of 2025, and unfortunately, you know, we're all adults here, we're all grown-ups, and I think sometimes you just have to have hard discussions with players. I think there's a few players that I would be letting go at the end of this year potentially, and 2025. Micah Sivo, yes, he's the 4th highest try scorer in the club's history, but how many tries has he let in? How many mistakes has he let in? And there's also some other players that I think just haven't named up and have to go. Sean Lane, Joey Lussick, Ryan Mattison, Joe Offa and Gowie. There's a couple of other players that I probably cannot think of off the top of my head, but they need to be tapped on the shoulder and they need to be told, look, thanks for your services to the club, but unfortunately you're not getting any more deals with us and you have to move out. And I think 2025 is going to be a rebuild year for the club, but it's a chance for the club to move a lot of the deadwoods, to reinvest some of the money that is going to come from them players not being there in the better players, and the club has to look forward to the next couple of years. Do I enjoy making videos like these, especially about my own club? No. This whole season and a couple of other seasons, but this one particularly, it's not good for you, like me as a person. It's not good for your mental health. It's not good for the relationships you have with other people, because the fact that Parramatta is not doing well, losing, it's not good for people that I'm close to, because obviously I'm not the best person to be around. It affects me sleep, it affects me behaviour, because I do have a lot of sleepless nights worrying about this club, worrying about the direction, about where they're going. It causes a lot of anxiety, it causes pretty much every emotion that you can go through as a human being. And you know, it's, if this club comes last again this year, I really don't know. I've supported this club for well over 30 years, but enough's enough. You know, I might have to take a break from supporting Parramatta. I really, you know, I might have to go full-time St Helens. That's my club that I support in the Super League, is St Helens. Maybe I have to go full-time supporting them, because it's just, it's really, really tough sometimes. But there's a game coming up next week against Cronulla. I think Cronulla will have a few players out, and I think one of the key problems this year in a lot of the losses has been, there's just been key errors at key moments. We saw it again tonight. There's been some times where, like, there was a couple of moments in that first half, losing the ball in the second or third tackle, looking for an offload when you're trying to hold on to it, and it resulted in a try. Second half, South Sydney just doing a normal hit up, fourth tackle, trying to get out of trouble, and then Kelma Tuolungi dives on the legs of the players. The referee goes, you can't do that. You know, just lapses, like South Sydney give away a penalty, first tackle, Kelma Tuolungi drops the ball, stuff like that, and then they go back down the other end of the field and potentially score a try. And it's been a problem this year, key errors, key moments at the wrong possible times, and the players have to be better. There's going to be a lot of soul searching this week. Am I confident that Parramatta can turn it around? We'll just have to wait until Mitchell Moses comes back. It's, as I said earlier in the video, it's really concerning that him and Gutherson are out, and the club's just not, the players are not stepping up, I should say. It's really, really concerning, and it's concerning going forward. But the Parramatta Eels, in terms of on the field and with the recruitment and all that, they're in a crisis, and there's going to be a big clean out, I believe, in 2025, and with the board as well. There's going to be people that will have to fall on their sword. So that's my video for today, and yeah, I'm recording this straight after Parramatta lost against South Sydney. So obviously I've got an out wrote down, but that's my video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll catch us all later. Ta-ra for now.